My name is Mara Calloway. I'm 33 years old. 7 years ago, my sister told my parents I failed out of medical school because of a drug scandal. She lied. That lie cost me my family, my home, my father's voice on the phone, my mother's birthday cards, every Thanksgiving seed I used to pretend didn't matter. For 7 years, I was the daughter they whispered about, the failure, the addict, the shame. Then last month, my sister's 6-year-old son was rushed into my hospital with a failing heart, and the pediatric cardiac team paged the only surgeon in the state who could operate fast enough to save him. The doors opened. I walked in wearing scrubs, a surgical cap, and a white coat with my name stitched on the chest. Dr. Mara Calloway, Chief of Pediatric Cardiothoracic Surgery. My mother read the name twice. Then she grabbed the wall like the floor had disappeared. My father whispered, "No." And my sister, the woman who spent 7 years telling everyone I was not a doctor, looked at my badge and realized something worse than the truth. Her son's life was in the hands of the sister she tried to erase. But to understand why my mother nearly collapsed when she saw my name badge, you need to know what my sister stole from me 7 years earlier. I grew up in Briar Falls, Pennsylvania, in a blue house with white shutters and a cracked walkway my father always promised he'd fix in the spring. He never did. My father, Paul Calloway, was a high school principal. Strict, respected, the kind of man who used full names when he was disappointed. My mother, Elaine, taught 4th grade for 32 years. She believed every problem could be solved with a laminated chart, a casserole, or silence. And then there was my older sister, Celia. Celia was the sun in our house. Not because she was warmer than me, because everyone revolved around her. She was beautiful in the way adults reward early. Big smile, perfect hair, perfect timing. The kind of girl neighbors called a natural leader, when what they meant was she knew how to make people do what she wanted. I was the quiet one, the serious one, the useful one. When I was 10, I asked for a microscope for Christmas. Celia asked for a karaoke machine. Guess which gift my parents filmed being opened? I learned early that achievement only counted if it looked good in photos. When Celia got promoted to assistant manager at a boutique, my mother threw a dinner. When I got accepted to medical school at Temple, my father cried. That is the part I replay the most. Not the lie, not the screaming. That one moment. He stood at the kitchen table holding my acceptance letter with both hands, and his glasses fogged because he was trying not to cry. My daughter is going to be a doctor, he said. For one afternoon, I belonged to him in a way that felt like pride. Celia was there too. She hugged me. She smiled. She said, "Mara, this is amazing." But when she pulled back, her hand was too tight on my shoulder. I remember that now. At the time, I thought it was excitement. It was fear. Because for the first time in our lives, the attention in the room moved and did not immediately come back to her. Medical school was brutal. Not television brutal. Real brutal. Debt, panic, anatomy lab, $6 sandwiches from vending machines, and crying in stairwells where nobody could see. But I loved it. Even when I hated it, I loved it. My parents helped the first year. Not with tuition. Scholarships and loans covered most of that. But my father had set aside money for living expenses. A small education account he said he and Mom had started when I was little. "It's not much," he told me, "but it'll keep you from working nights." I thanked him so hard he looked embarrassed. I called home every Sunday. Mom asked if I was eating. Dad asked if my grades were holding. Celia asked questions neither of them asked. "Who are your professors? Who is your advisor? What hospital are you rotating at? What happens if someone takes a leave? Can the school kick you out? Does Dad still control the education account?" I thought she was interested. I thought she was proud. I was so hungry for a sister that I ignored the fact she was collecting details like evidence. Second year, I met my best friend, Annika Rao. Annika was brilliant, loud, tiny, and terrifying. She drank black coffee like it had personally offended her, and could memorize an entire pharmacology chart in one night while insulting the textbook. She became my person. When my family forgot my 25th birthday because Celia announced she was engaged that same week, Annika bought me a cupcake, stuck a surgical glove on top like a balloon, and sang happy birthday so badly a nurse asked if someone was in pain. 6 months later, Annika collapsed during rounds. Brain tumor, glioblastoma, stage 4. There are words you understand as a medical student before you understand them as a human being. Glioblastoma is one of them. In a lecture hall, it means prognosis, imaging, treatment protocol. In a hospital room, it means your best friend staring at the ceiling and asking if she should call her mother even though they haven't spoken in 9 years. I took a leave. Official, documented, approved. 1 semester, caregiver status. My dean signed it. My advisor signed it. My seat was held. My academic standing remained intact. I would return in January. I called Celia first. I do not know why. Maybe because I was scared and wanted my sister. Maybe because part of me still believed if I gave her the truth, she would protect it. I told her everything: the tumor, the leave, the paperwork, the plan to return. She was perfect on the phone. "Oh, Mara, I'm so sorry. Don't worry about Mom and Dad. I'll explain gently if it comes up. You focus on Annika." 2 days later, my father called at 11:38 p.m. I was in the neuro ICU, sitting beside Annika while she slept. His voice was not worried. It was cold. "Your sister told us." My stomach dropped before I knew why. "Told you what?" "Don't insult me." "Dad, what are you talking about? You failed out." I stood so fast the chair hit the wall. "What?" "You failed out of medical school, drained the living expense account, and tried to blame it on some fake sick friend." For a second, I could not speak. Not because I had no defense, because the lie was so ugly my brain rejected it. "Dad, no." I took a formal leave. "Annika is real. She has brain cancer. I can send you the paperwork." Celia already showed us paperwork. "What paperwork?" "Messages, screenshots, bank withdrawals." My hand went cold around the phone. "Dad, listen to me. I am standing in the neuro ICU right now. I can put Annika's doctor on the phone." My mother came on the line. She was crying. "Mara, why would you do this to us?" "Mom, I didn't." "Celia tried to protect you." "No, she didn't. She said you'd deny everything." "Of course she did. That is how liars build walls. They tell people your truth is coming and label it proof of the lie." My father came back on the phone. "You embarrassed this family. You embarrassed me." "Dad, please, give me 1 hour. I'll email everything. You are not to call this house until you're ready to be honest." The line went dead. 4 minutes. That was all it took. 4 minutes to lose a family I had spent 25 years trying to earn. I sent the paperwork anyway. Leave approval, dean's signature, medical school enrollment status, Annika's diagnosis confirmation, everything. No response. I called 14 times. Blocked. I emailed my mother. No response. I mailed certified copies. Returned unopened. A week later, Celia texted me. "I'm sorry. I only told them because I love you. Please get help. Get help." That phrase became the cage she built around me. Any protest sounded like denial. Any evidence sounded desperate. Any anger sounded unstable. And my parents believed all of it because believing Celia had always been easier than asking who she became when nobody was watching. Annika died in November. I was alone with her. Before she died, she made me promise 2 things. "Finish," she whispered. "I will. And don't let your family make you small enough to fit their lie." I didn't answer right away. She squeezed my hand. "Mara, I promise." She died before sunrise. I returned to school in January. I did not heal. I functioned. There is a difference. I studied like grief was chasing me. Passed exams, completed rotations, matched into surgery, then pediatric cardiothoracic surgery. People told me it was one of the hardest paths in medicine. Good. I needed hard. Hard gave me structure. Hard did not ask why my mother stopped calling. Hard did not send Christmas cards back unopened. Years passed. I became very good at keeping children alive. That sounds simple. It is not. A child's heart is small. Their vessels are delicate. Their families are terrified. Every mistake has a face. I trained under Dr. Helen Voss, a woman with silver hair, brutal honesty, and hands so steady residents called her the clock. She saw through me in a week. "You have the look," she said one night after a 12-hour case. "What look?" "The one people get when they decide being excellent is safer than being loved." I looked down at my coffee. She said, "It works for a while, then it eats you." She became my mentor, then my emergency contact. Then, slowly, without ever asking permission, the closest thing I had to a mother. I met Daniel Price during fellowship, pediatric anesthesiologist. Calm in chaos. Funny in the dry way only hospital people are funny. On our 3rd date, he asked about my family. I told him the truth, not the polished version, the whole thing. When I finished, he did not say, "But they're your parents." He did not say, "Maybe one day." He said, They chose not to verify whether their daughter was alive and safe. That is on them. I married him 2 years later in Helen's backyard. 38 guests, no parents. One empty chair I pretended was for Annika. By 33, I was chief of Pediatric Cardiothoracic Surgery at St. Bartholomew Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. Young for the role. Too young, some people whispered. Let them whisper. I had learned that people who whisper usually do it because they cannot stand what is true out loud. Then came the call. Tuesday, 2:16 a.m. I was asleep for the first time in 30 hours when my pager went off. Pediatric cardiac emergency. Incoming transfer. 6-year-old male. Severe blunt chest trauma. Suspected cardiac tamponade. Unstable. ETA 11 minutes. I was in the car in 6. By the time I reached the trauma bay, the team was assembled. Nurses, fellows, perfusion on standby. OR notified. Blood ready. I took the tablet from the charge nurse and opened the incoming file. Patient, Oliver Grayson. Age, 6. Mother, Celia Grayson. Emergency contacts, Celia Grayson. Paul Calloway. Elaine Calloway. I stopped walking, not dramatically. No gasp, no drop tablet. Just stopped. The hallway sound narrowed. The monitors, overhead pages, rolling stretcher wheels, all of it moved far away. Oliver, my nephew. I had never met him. I knew of him only because Aunt June had secretly mailed me one family Christmas card 3 years earlier. Celia, her husband Mark, and a toddler with dark curls holding a wooden train. Oliver. The child in that photo was now 11 minutes away from dying. My fellow, Dr. Singh, looked at me. Chief? I handed him the tablet. Patient is a biological relative. I'm documenting conflict of interest. Page Dr. Abrams as backup. If my judgment is impaired, he takes over. Singh read the name, then looked back at me. Understood. I scrubbed in. There is a myth that surgeons become cold. That is not true. Cold hands cannot operate. What we become is contained. Fear goes in one box, memory in another, pain in another. You stack them neatly and lock them until the bleeding stops. The ambulance arrived at 2:29. Oliver came in pale, intubated, too still for a child. His chest was bruised, blood pressure barely holding. Ultrasound showed fluid around the heart. Cardiac tamponade. Every second mattered. Behind the stretcher, running and crying, came Celia, and behind her, my parents. My mother looked smaller, hair gray at the temples, no makeup, winter coat thrown over pajamas. My father looked older than I was prepared for, thinner, shoulders rounded, but his voice was the same when he grabbed the intake nurse's arm. That's my grandson. Where is the surgeon? The nurse said, the chief is here. Then get the chief. I stepped out of the trauma bay already masked, gloved, and capped. My badge was clipped to my scrub top. Dr. Mara Calloway, MD, Chief of Pediatric Cardiothoracic Surgery. My father saw my badge first, then my face, then the badge again. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. My mother made a small broken sound, like something inside her had split. Celia saw me last, and for 1 second, one beautiful, terrible second, she forgot to perform. Her face showed the truth. Not surprise, recognition. She knew. Maybe not that I was chief, but she knew I had not failed out. She knew I had become exactly what she told them I never could. Dr. Calloway, the nurse said, OR is ready. I looked at my parents. Not Mom, not Dad. Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, your grandson is critically unstable. We're taking him to surgery now. I'll update you when I can. My mother whispered, Mara? I turned. Not now. Then I pushed through the OR doors. Oliver's heart had been compressed by blood collecting around it. The injury had torn part of the right atrium, small but deadly. In adults, you have room. In children, everything is smaller, faster, less forgiving. We opened his chest, released the pressure, found the tear, repaired it, started bypass support for 22 minutes. 22 minutes where my nephew's life depended on a machine, a team, and the hands of the aunt his mother erased. I did not think about Celia. I did not think about my parents. I thought about sutures, flow, rhythm, pressure. I thought about a 6-year-old boy who had never chosen any of this. At 5:41 a.m., Oliver's heart beat on its own. Strong, steady. A room full of adults exhaled at once. Dr. Abrams, who had stood back up the entire time, looked at me and said, That was clean. I removed my gloves. My nephew is alive? He nodded. Your nephew is alive. I went to the waiting room at 6:05. My parents stood when they saw me. Celia stood too, one hand over her mouth. I kept my voice clinical. Oliver survived surgery. His heart was injured in the crash, but we repaired the tear and stabilized him. He is in the cardiac ICU. The next 24 hours are critical, but he has a real chance. My mother started sobbing. My father gripped the back of a chair. Celia said, "Thank you." I looked at her. There were 7 years inside that look. "You're welcome. The ICU team will update you." I turned to leave. My father spoke behind me. "Mara." I stopped. "You're a doctor." I turned back slowly. "I am. The chief." "Yes." But Celia said, he could not finish. That was the first crack. My mother looked at Celia. "Celia." Celia went pale. Not grieving pale. Caught pale. "Mom, this is not the time." I almost laughed. For 7 years, my entire life had been not the time. Not the time to verify. Not the time to listen. Not the time to open the letter. Not the time to ask why a medical school would let a failed student become a surgeon. My father's voice hardened. "What did you tell us?" Celia looked around. Nurses nearby. Other families. The hospital lobby. Too public for her. "I was trying to protect you." My mother recoiled like she had been slapped. "From what?" Celia's eyes flicked to me. And there it was again. Calculation. Even with her son in cardiac ICU, she was searching for an angle. I stepped forward. "Whatever conversation you need to have it outside my unit. Oliver is my patient. I will not allow this to interfere with his care." My father looked at me then, in a way I had waited for when I was 18, 22, 25. He looked at me like he finally understood he did not know me at all. I walked away. For the next 12 hours, Oliver stabilized. Good blood pressure. Good oxygenation. No arrhythmia. Neurology intact when sedation lifted. He squeezed his mother's hand. He moved his toes. He asked for water. He was going to live. That should have been the end of the story. It was not. Because Celia had built her lie carefully. And lies built carefully do not collapse all at once. They fight. At 9 p.m., while I was finishing notes, hospital legal called. "Dr. Calloway," said Martin Shaw, our general counsel. "We received a complaint from the patient's mother." I closed my eyes. "Of course you did. She alleges you concealed a conflict of interest, operated for personal revenge, and may not have proper credentials." I looked through the glass wall of my office toward the cardiac ICU. Oliver was asleep in room 4, alive because of the credentials she was questioning. Martin continued. "Given the family relationship, the board chair wants a formal meeting tomorrow morning. You, Dr. Abrams, risk management, and the family." I smiled without humor. "Tell them I'll be there." The next morning, conference room B was full. Hospital legal, risk management, Dr. Abrams, Dr. Singh, the ICU nurse manager, my parents, Celia, her husband Mark, Aunt June, who had driven in overnight after I called her. Celia wore yesterday's clothes and a face arranged into victimhood. My mother would not look at her. My father looked like he had not slept. Martin opened the meeting. "This meeting concerns a formal complaint regarding Dr. Mara Calloway's role in the emergency surgery performed on Oliver Grayson." Celia leaned forward. "I was not told my sister would be operating. We have a complicated history, and I believe she should have stepped aside." Dr. Abrams spoke before I could. "She disclosed the relationship before the patient arrived. I was present as backup. Her judgment was not impaired. Her performance was exceptional." Celia swallowed. Martin turned a page. "As for credentials, Dr. Calloway is licensed in Pennsylvania, board certified, fellowship trained, and has been chief of this department for 22 months. There is no credentialing issue." Celia's jaw tightened. Then Martin looked directly at her. "However, your complaint includes a statement that Dr. Calloway failed out of medical school and may be falsely representing her training." My father closed his eyes. Celia said nothing. Martin slid a folder across the table. "These are Dr. Calloway's verified credentials from Temple, residency, fellowship, board certification, and faculty appointment." Then Aunt June placed her own folder on the table. "And these are the emails Mara sent her parents 7 years ago. The leave of absence approval, the medical record confirming Annika Rao's diagnosis, the certified letter returned unopened." My mother covered her mouth. Celia whispered, "Aunt June." "No," Aunt June said. "You do not get to use my name like a door you can close." She opened the folder. I also have the screenshots you sent me telling me not to mention Mara's residency to your parents because it would, quote, confuse them. My father looked at Celia. You knew. Celia's eyes filled. Dad, I was scared. His voice broke. Of what? She looked at me with something like hatred and shame mixed together. Of her becoming everything. Silence. Not dramatic. Worse. Real. I said nothing. I did not need to. Aunt June was not finished. There's more. Celia's head snapped toward her. My mother whispered, What more? Aunt June pulled out bank statements. Mara's education account did not run out because Mara drained it. It was transferred in 3 withdrawals to an account ending in 4412, Celia's account. The room went very still. My father stared at the paper. What? Aunt June's voice shook now. You asked me last year to look at old records because you thought your bank had made an error. I found this, but I didn't understand what it meant until Mara called me. My mother turned to Celia slowly. You stole her money? Celia started crying. Finally. But nobody moved to comfort her. That account was just sitting there, she said. She was gone. She didn't need it. I was in medical school, I said. You had loans. My father stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. That was her money. Celia flinched. He said it again, louder. That was her money. For the first time in my life, my father defended me in the same room where Celia could hear it. It was 7 years late. But it landed. Celia's husband, Mark, pushed back from the table. You told me your parents gave you that money for the wedding. My mother made a sound. The account. My education fund. Celia had stolen it to pay for her wedding. Then told my parents I had wasted it. That was the center of the lie. Not jealousy alone. Money. The oldest ugly reason in the world. Martin closed his folder. The hospital matter is resolved. Dr. Calloway acted appropriately and saved the patient's life. Any family financial issues are outside the scope of this meeting. He stood. Meeting over. But my family stayed seated. Because sometimes the official meeting ends and the real one begins. My father looked at me. Mara. I held up one hand. No. His face fell. I need to say, no, I repeated. Not here. Not after 7 years. Not in the hospital where I work. Not while your grandson is recovering because my team saved him. You do not get to make this about your grief right now. My mother was crying silently. I looked at her. You returned my letter unopened. She nodded. Broken. I did. You blocked my number. Yes. You missed my wedding. Her shoulders shook. Yes. You believed her because believing her was easier than asking why I sounded so desperate. My father sat down slowly. I looked at Celia. And you. When Oliver wakes up enough to understand the world again, you are going to tell him that the doctor who saved his life is his Aunt Mara. Not a failure. Not an addict. Not a ghost. His aunt. Celia wiped her face. Mara, please. No. You taught this family to live inside a lie. You can start teaching your son how to leave one. Then I walked out. Oliver recovered. Children are miracles that way. One day, they look too small for the hospital bed. A week later, they are asking if the scar makes them look like a superhero. The first time he was awake enough to talk, he looked at me and said, Are you the heart doctor? I smiled. I am. Mom said you're her sister. I looked at Celia, who stood in the corner pale and silent. Yes, I said. I am. He thought about that. Then you're my aunt. Something in me cracked, but gently. Yes, I'm your Aunt Mara. He smiled with dry lips and sleepy eyes. Cool. That one word did more to heal me than any apology I had received so far. 2 weeks after Oliver went home, my parents asked to meet. I chose the place. Not their house. Not mine. A diner halfway between Philadelphia and Briar Falls. Neutral ground. Public enough that nobody could rewrite the conversation later. Daniel sat in the booth behind me, reading a book. He would not interrupt unless I asked. My parents arrived 10 minutes early. My father had a folder. Of course he did. Men like my father trust paper more than emotion. He slid it toward me. Inside were bank records, a cashier's check, and a letter. We sold the lake lot, he said. The money Celia took. We're paying it back with interest. I looked at the cashier's check. $86,400. My mother said, It doesn't fix anything. No, I said. It doesn't. She nodded. But it matters, I added. My father looked down at the table. I failed you. I had imagined those words so many times that hearing them felt strange. Small. Not enough. Still necessary. Yes, I said. He flinched. I failed you, he repeated. Because I was proud. Because once I decided you had embarrassed me, I refused to look again. Your mother asked once if we should open your letter. I said no. That was me. My mother looked at him, startled. He kept going. I spent my life telling students to check their sources. I did not check my own daughter. That was the first apology that sounded like truth. Not because it was emotional, because it was specific. I said, if we rebuild anything, it will be slow. You will not come to my house yet. You will not use guilt. You will not use family. You will not ask me to forgive Celia so everyone can feel better at Christmas. My mother nodded fast. My father nodded once. And you will go to counseling. Dad's jaw tightened automatically. Then he caught himself. Okay. My mother reached across the table. I did not take her hand. She withdrew it. That hurt her. I know. It was supposed to. Not as punishment, as information. Some bridges do not reopen because someone says sorry on the bank. They reopen plank by plank. Celia sent an email to the entire family 3 days later. Aunt June made sure of it. Subject line, the truth about Mara. 43 recipients. She admitted everything. The stolen money, the forged screenshots, the lie about drugs, the fake concern, the years of keeping my parents from verifying the truth. No poetry, no self-pity, just facts. It was the first decent thing she had done in 7 years. The fallout was quiet. Celia stopped getting invited to cousin dinners. Mark filed for divorce after the bank records came out. And the family that once believed every word she said suddenly stopped believing her at all. I did not celebrate. Celebration would mean I was still living inside the wreckage with her. I had surgeries to perform, a husband to go home to, and a little boy who was still learning how to live with a scar across his chest. 6 months later, Oliver came back for his follow-up. Healthy, loud, wearing dinosaur sneakers. The second he saw me in the hallway, he ran straight into my legs and yelled, "Aunt Mara!" My mother cried. My father looked away. Celia stood there silent. For once, she didn't try to control the story. A year later, I accepted a statewide Surgical Excellence Award. My team was there. Daniel was there. Helen was there. Aunt June was there. And in the back row sat my parents, looking like two people who knew they did not deserve those seats, but were grateful I had left the door open. During my speech, I said only one thing about the past. Every surgeon knows repair is not the same as restoration. Sometimes a heart survives with a scar. The scar does not mean it failed. It means it healed around the truth of what happened. My mother cried. My father stood when everyone clapped. I saw him, and for that night, seeing him was enough. Now it is Sunday morning. Daniel is making coffee. There are 4 plates on my kitchen table because my parents are coming for breakfast. 4 plates. Not because everything is fixed. Because we are trying. And after 7 years of silence, trying is the first honest thing we have. If this story made you think about your own family,